Hello, everybody. Welcome to another one of our editions of the Muller Insight series. My name is Jeremy Keeley. I'm an associate of the Muller Institute, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome a friend of mine, Keith Nelson, who is the Director of Coaching for the Muller Institute and runs our business coaching program and our advanced coaching program. And actually is also the author of a book, Your Total Coach, which I actually practically use often. It's full of really pragmatic and practical guidance for being an excellent coach. Keith, welcome.
Thank you very much, Jeremy, and welcome.
Thank you. So tell us a bit more about you, Keith, before we get started on the insights itself.
Well, as you said, I'm the Director of the Coaching Programs at Muller. And I spend my working life doing three things, really. One is training people to become coaches. The second one is to offer one-to-one coaching for people. And then the third one is to work with organisations around developing performance-focused coaching cultures. So that's generally the work that I do now and have been doing for around 20 years.
20 years, wow. And so I guess you must have worked with a number of leaders over that time. What would you say was a sort of a characteristics or defining characteristics of the best leaders that you've worked alongside or that you know?
Well, let me roll my career back quite a long time now, and I became a coach when I was working in a large media organisation, a company called EMAP. And before I moved into a coaching and development role, I worked as a magazine editor, as a magazine publisher. And I worked for this organisation for 15 years. And it grew from being the 1960s as a printer with some spare capacity on its web to print a magazine called Trout and Salmon, and then another one called Angling Times. And within the space of 30 years, it became a FTSE 100 company, which was a marvellous achievement. And it covered print, TV, radio, digital, a number of different areas. And the guy who kind of really drove it was a guy called Robin Miller. And he started off as a reporter on Motorcycle News and went on to become CEO and the company chairman. And he was noticeable for his kind of involvement with people. He also had a tremendous interest in people and a tremendous optimism. And every Friday, he would go away from his office. He would get on his motorbike and he would go to different parts of the EMAP empire at the time. He would go and talk to people, and he would go and talk to people at their desks, and he would remember their names, and he would take an interest in people. And I'm now telling this story many, many years, over 20 years after I left that company. So there was an incredible focus on performance. There was a focus on creativity, and there was this real genuine interest in people. And if I can just share one story from it. When I joined the company, I joined as a magazine editor, and I mentioned to my publisher, as my boss, that I'd never, in my former company, I had never met senior management. I didn't know who they were. If I saw them in the street, I wouldn't recognize them. And our little bit of the company had its annual conference and a company dinner. And it was only about 2 months after I joined, and I sat down at dinner, and I was next to Robin Miller, this chief executive. And that was the kind of touch that they had in that company. And so it made people feel really valued, it made people feel really good. And to use the cliche, really to go the extra mile. So that was a big learning journey for me. Sorry.
Yeah. So I get the sense of a real human touch, a real connection with our humanity, with the person being at the centre of Robin's energy, if you like, or is that right? Just wanting to connect.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And it was just a natural way that he had with people. But then there was also a passion for magazines and for topics. So there's all sorts of special interests. So it might have been motorcycling, or it might have been golf, it might have been football, or it might have been keeping fish, or fishing itself, lots of different things. So there was a natural, spontaneous passion
Yeah.
that just ran through this company, and an ability to be flexible and to move incredibly quickly. So at one stage, a rival was launching a magazine, and we got to hear about it. And so a team was put on it, and the magazine was launched within 28 days. And this wasn't unusual. This could happen very, very quickly. So there's an immense amount of flexibility that was going along with that.
Right. And how much of that was his leadership? What were the characteristics, other than the real connection on a, like you said, on a Friday with all the individuals really connecting with the person? How much of that organization's flexibility, agility, creativity, what were the other defining aspects of his leadership that sort of set that up?
I think it was one of those things that I've mentioned. It just created an environment where, I mean, for me, as somebody who was working in that organisation, I wanted to perform at my best, and with a freedom. So there was a lack of, I'd say, there was a lack of bureaucracy. There was a fleet-footedness. There was a can-do attitude, and it kind of sustained that for many, many years, even though it went through, lots of different growing stages. From being I mean, I joined it probably when it's, I don't know, some kind of a teenager, I guess. But there was a lot of energy, there was a lot of enthusiasm, there was this freedom. And so there was a culture around, and this was crucial, that you were allowed to make mistakes. But the crucial thing was, if you made a mistake, you learned from it.
Yeah.
So if people, and I certainly made, many mistakes in my role, but the crucial thing was to learn from them, to learn from those mistakes, and not to repeat them. And I think that was very liberating as a culture and as an environment, and that people will make decisions. They are in publishing. It was a very fast-moving environment. Some things will work out, some things won't. So there was a support for people, but it was that learning which was, which was crucial.
Yeah.
And in one board meeting, I sat sitting in a board meeting, and Robin was in the meeting. All he did in the meeting was ask questions. Never gave a view, never gave an opinion, but those could be very challenging questions, and they were really making people think. So there was a culture of encouraging that sense of responsibility, and I think commitment to the organisation. So those sorts of things, they're sort of within his leadership.
Yes, what struck me about how you're talking was about a couple of things. One about the sustainability of this, and earlier on you said he was really kind of, you didn't maybe use this word, but really true to himself, or really authentic. It was something so that almost that somehow seems to generate the sustainability. If you're really true to yourself, it's easier to continue. But also what struck me was trust. It seemed to me he created a culture of trust somehow. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. And he just had a very easy way with people. So it didn't matter if he was going to a different part of the business. He would appear to be equally at home with the receptionist as he would with, a director or a senior manager. And he took this real interest in people as well. So, and for me, an element of this is that I'm telling this story now all these years later.
Inspired you. And that,
Yeah.
just connect back then to you, somehow you're moving from being a magazine editor eventually into being a coach, internal coach. Was that right at the beginning? And then what was that part of your inspiration, or what was the thing that inspired you to make that move?
Well, I think in terms of my role, once I'd finished editing, I'd edited a number of magazines. I tried publishing, but it's very much not really it's not my forte. So I moved into this learning development role, which was creating new magazines, working with broken magazines which needed redirecting, and then developing people. So this started bringing in the coaching, so coaching new editors, and then it expanded as we started to train managers as coaches in the late 1990s. But I had a background. My background was very much in sports journalism, sports magazines. So I got to go around the world, interview the world's top athletes and the world's top coaches. So at that stage, I was getting an education in coaching and listening to coaches who could take their athletes to Olympic gold medals, world championships. So I found that absolutely fascinating, just to sit and listen to them and to observe them and to notice how they were with their athletes and how they could get that athlete to the pinnacle of world-class performance. Olympics are only here once every 4 years, so to get that athlete to be capable of winning a gold medal on that particular day, I just found absolutely fascinating. So it just gave me a real insight and a real education into what I would say is world-class performance coaching, which I then, so that gave me a really good lesson, a really good introduction to coaching.
Wow.
And these coaches were all what I would say people. They could connect with people, but they could also encourage that individual to be the best in the world on one particular day. So I found that a wonderful education.
Yeah, interesting. And then you looking out for it. I noticed that you said earlier about the culture of EMAT being helping people to wanting for people to be at their best. And so did you think that your eye is on it, for want of a better word? So your eye is on the leader who has this ability to ask questions rather than dictate, to create a culture in which people who are working in that culture can be at their best. Is something about leadership as well.
It's for me, it's this hearts and minds approach. It's the leader who said, "Oh, I'll be a great leader if I could only get my people to come with me." So for me, it's really around not just doing the job, but this sort of psychological, this emotional state when you are doing the job and really committed to it. And I believe everyone is trying to do their best, but I think there's something around having that environment where people want to come into work, they are enjoying it, they are expressing themselves, and they've got this commitment. And for me, leadership is crucial in that, because leadership is setting that environment, it's setting that culture, and it's like it's like a river, isn't it? It's almost, what's the culture of the organisation? Is it a fresh river and you can see the fish swimming around, or is it a muddy, little bit stagnant kind of environment? So I think that environment is crucial for people to want to perform at their best, because then performance will rise. So for me, it's getting those elements together, I think, is crucial in an authentic way.
Yeah. So if you are a leader, and I guess this is probably where your work comes in, but if you are a leader and you're looking to want to be more like that, what would you say is a kind of step forward? What would help? What would you recommend for leaders to start to be even more like that, if you like, to be more capable of creating the clean river rather than the stagnant river, to be more capable of creating a culture where people can be at their best. Where would you say you should start, or one could start as a leader?
That's the things that sprung into my mind is ears and eyes. And we, they want to take the organisation forward to be more successful. And so that might be, what is that gold medal for the organisation in 3, 4, 5 years' time? And then they're having the eye on the future and the eye on the here and now, where are we? How are we going to get from here to there? So they feel that's just the performance side of it.
Yeah.
But then it's really, I suppose this is where the ears comes in, and probably the heart comes in as well. It's around, well, how are we going to do this? And the ears is really encouraging people within the context of the organisation, direction of travel, its vision and its values. It's really encouraging people. How can we get people to be functioning, to be performing at their best, and really wanting to come in to work to achieve that goal? So this is the hearts and minds approach. So this is the listening. This is taking an interest in people. This is really kind of engaging people on the cause and not just seeing them as another number, not just seeing people as units, but there's real living people, and everyone's got their lives, everyone's got their stories. Their stories are fascinating, and this is around, one of the things I've noticed is around people will come in, they'll do the job, and then they'll go home, and they might be treasurer of an organisation, or might be organising this, or doing lots of things, and they're doing all these things with passion. So if that can be brought into the workplace, I think it's immensely has huge potential for organisation, and that involves autonomy. So this is distributed leadership, throughout the organisation, and coaching, and all those sorts of things. I think, which really enable people to feel in control, to have responsibility, but also, responsibility is a double-edged sword. Because a lot of people like responsibility and accountability, but on the other hand, what happens if it goes wrong? Yeah. So this is where the learning culture comes in, and you let people make mistakes, but it's important that they learn from them, so that the mistakes aren't repeated.
Yeah, great. So listening, a kind of real listening with eyes, ears, and heart. I do get it. So many leaders, there's a kind of they feel an obligation to have to be something, but actually what I'm hearing from you is actually just really listen to this, really listen to what the people are, who the people are in your organization, what's happening in your organization. Yes, you need to listen to what's needed, but really hearing that, but also then creating this sense of autonomy. Trust again comes into that, doesn't it? And then this learning culture that allows them to fully take up their responsibility. So that's what I'm hearing from what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think different leaders were, no two leaders are the same. And there is a bit of a cliche of the leader who's this inspirational figure, riding the horse, leading into battle. But I think leaders can come from many, have many different sort of personality characteristics. And I like the work of Sandler in this. So yes, you can get the leader who's charging into battle, but then you can get the leader who's sitting right in amongst all the troops and being one of them, and has got a real passion for people and nurturing and caring for people. And then you can get the very cool, calm, and collected leader who's maybe more logically driven and very rational. And great leaders can come from very different perspectives.
Yeah, great.
And I think we need to recognise that there isn't a type, or there isn't a particular image. But this sort of leadership, leaders can bring many different personality characteristics. And, no leader is perfect. We've all got our strengths and weaknesses, and then the quality around that is building a team around that. So, if a leader has these characteristics, but is not so strong on these, yes, that leader can develop these, but also maybe build a team so that these are complementing one another, so that there is a roundedness amongst that senior leadership team.
it's interesting. It comes back then to this sustainability, doesn't it? For me, you've got when you're able to be yourself and trust yourself, but just to, if you like, open your eyes, ears, and heart in this, then it's much more likely to be sustainable. If you feel you have to be something you're not to be a leader, then that is kind of limited in its life at some point. It's not, hasn't the same kind of sustainability. So, but then what you're saying is bring yourself, but build your team around you to bring the diversity that's needed in this.
Yeah, and I think this sense of authenticity. And just being who you are and being more of who you are. And yes, we all put on a facade. We all put on a facade, but actually embedding a lot of your authentic self and bringing yourself into that role. And I think a lot of leaders can be. It's a really interesting area. This weaknesses of the leaders or the vulnerabilities, and showing a soft underbelly of leadership, which can be one of those trigger points that for people that might be sitting there. But no single leader has all the answers, and so there is something around how that leader presents themselves within the organisation, very much as a human being. This kind of sense of roundedness. And as I say, no one is perfect. And we all have I think we all have our strengths, and we've all got our development areas as well. And for me, a leader in an organisation is the lead learner. If we want a learning culture, then the lead learner is the person who's ultimately is leading the organisation.
Yeah, the leader in an organisation being the lead learner.
Yeah,
bringing their humanity to this, being more of who you are rather than missing.
Yeah, because this is. No, carry on, Jeremy.
No, I was going to say leadership is a practice rather than a skill in a way, isn't it? It's part of you. It's something you develop about yourself when you pay attention to it.
Yes. And I always think you can go back to when you were first appointed as a supervisor or as a manager. So the leader might have reached some heady heights now, but always go back to when, when that person first took on a leadership role in the organisation, and think back to what they were like then, because that will have the characteristics writ large in terms of their development, and it is this. This journey that they're on, but what they brought in at the start, those will be their fundamental characteristics that will still live with them as they go through, and actually having an awareness of that so that they can modify, adapt, flex will be absolutely crucial, and this is a crucial part of the learning journey.
And by building on that, you make it sustainable rather than by trying to change yourself completely to be something you're not. And
I think the word I'm hearing you're using, is this sustainability. And I think this is crucial. And I always like Covey and start with the end in mind. And this is the legacy. And a question I've asked leaders, and they might be in the first year or so of their leadership, but when you walk out of the organisation for the last time, whether you're going on to a new role or you're changing your career or you're stopping work, what are you leaving behind? What's your legacy? And I always think that's a good place to, thinking point for leaders, so that when they exit the car park or close the door for the last time, what are they leaving behind? And I think this theme of sustainability is crucial, because it's easy to get a quick fix. It's easy to, organisations sometimes bring in interims to change things and fix things. They'll go in and they'll do some good work, but they can often leave a trail of destruction behind. So headline figures look good, but actually everyone is then surveying some wreckage, and can the organisation cope beyond that? So I think this dimension of leadership, the legacy, and leading into the future is absolutely critical, and it's absolutely fundamental.
Yeah, great. And it just come back right to the beginning of this interview with Robin, or this conversation with the legacy that Robin Miller left with you, in a way,
Yeah.
sustainable legacy left. I think we're probably running out of time, so I suspect we probably need to close this. But is there anything more you want to say, or anything before we close? Is there anything that's left?
No, I think that obviously it's very much somebody who's who uses and believes in coaching approaches.
Yeah.
And I think one of the crucial things for coaching, I think for leaders, is for leaders to, I think we're coaching for leaders because it creates a safe space for them to think about their leadership.
Yeah.
It creates a safe space to maybe discuss some of their, not just their strategies, but some of their, the challenges they might have in the role, which is done in a confidential environment, is so valuable. But then that role models them. They can then, they are the key role model in the organisation. And I believe coaching approach, which asks questions, takes interest, encourages empowerment, distributes leadership. This is a way of leaders, moving forward. And anyone in an organisation can be a leader, not just the person who's got the office on the 15th floor or wherever it might happen to be.
Yeah, thank you. So anyone in your organisation can be a leader. And what I'm stuck with what you said is, what is it that you're leaving behind when you finish here? When you finish leading, what's the legacy you leave? Thank you very much, Keith. That was I really enjoyed that. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jeremy. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. And hopefully you'll join us the next time for the next one of our Muller Insights editions. Bye.
Bye-bye.